Welcome to District 6 Museum. My name is Farahnaaz Gilfelleon. I was born and raised in District 6.
It's 11 o'clock in the morning. I'm standing in the District 6 Museum. It's bustling with tourists everywhere you look. I can hear local and foreign accents as people pass me by. And among all the voices and whispers, I hear Auntie Farahnaaz. Turning around to find her, I see her standing in the center of the museum. She is about to start a tour with a group of tourists. And being new to the museum, I wonder about the life of the museum, how it started and who was a part of it.
A very diverse community. And when the Nationalist Party took over the country in 1948, income segregation and the British...
So when I relate the story about how the museum started, I'm always so conscious that I wasn't there, I wasn't present, but it sometimes feels like I was.
As Auntie Farahnaaz continues her tour, I sit down with Julius, Head of Collections and Acting Director at the District 6 Museum.
We have this sort of, what I call a sort of origin myth around the museum. So it's essentially, we start off as a movement rather than a museum. And the idea is that we don't want the city of Cape Town, we don't want BP, the oil company, to redevelop District 6 as an integrated area in the 80s. And the Hands of District 6 movement starts in the late 1980s. And in that moment, I read about how some of our founding trustees, they have this huge community meeting at the Zonnebloem estate. And they have a 2-day conference, basically, to remember District 6. And one of the ideas and the appeals that comes out of that conference is that we want a memory project, essentially. So what are the ways that we remember District 6? People weren't thinking about museum building, but they were thinking about exhibitions. So I know that they hosted exhibitions in Claremont at some point. They had different exhibitions in town. And I think this idea, and I think that's quite a nice idea, this idea that we're not going to be in a space, but we're going to hold exhibitions in different places. And one of the places that they found in 1992 was the Methodist Church in Buitenkant Street. And true to form, they put up this temporary exhibition, a photographic exhibition in 1992. And as the myth tells you, we never closed our doors, basically.
The feeling in the museum today is not what it was 30 years ago. 30 years ago was a unique time in South Africa's history. It was the dawn of democracy, and for the museum, it was a time that signaled its birth.
I think we were just, in terms of how we started, we were unfettered by academic disciplines, museum disciplines, and so it was people, like-minded people, who really had a vision for creating a space in which to remember District 6. And the vision was expansive. It wasn't just about District 6. It was about how the city of Cape Town works and why we need to hold the city accountable, why we need to feel like we own the city. And I think in that moment, that idea in 1994 is unique. It's unique in the sense that we were mobilizing the space of a museum to realize that vision. And we were sort of fueled, I think, by the hope that came with 1994 and this belief that now is our time, this is the opportunity to rewrite history and to write ourselves back into history. And I think that kind of energy can't be replicated. It belongs to a particular political moment, a particular moment within the activist movement where people were working towards the future that wasn't just about overthrowing it wasn't just about overthrowing apartheid, it was also now about building a democracy. And I think those moments were important in making us unique.
Today, the museum stands as a symbol of forced removals in the Cape. Not only does it tell the story of forced removals in District 6, it tells the story of forced removals in the wider Western Cape. So we're talking about forced removals in Claremont, in Constantia, and in Simonstown, to mention a few. But what is the future of the museum? What keeps its doors open, and what drives the people working there to keep going?
I think we always operate in a space of hope, even when we encounter situations in our work where it feels like there's no hope. Because I think all of us are somehow we love District 6, we love District 6s, some of us are from District 6, but I think you constantly have to be in a space of hope in terms of understanding why the institution needs to exist. So somebody actually, I think a few weeks ago, actually asked the question, why is the museum relevant? And I was so offended. I was so deeply offended by this question, because how is it not relevant? But it's a useful question to ask ourselves. And I think that we have to be able to say, we operate in the space of hope because of how we want the city of Cape Town to be and how we want the city to treat us and what we expect from the city. But it's also about hope in the sense that we are able to own our stories and somehow make peace with them, although that is a very tall order. That can be a very tall order. And so I think we're always operating in that space where we look to the future, essentially.
Every day, Auntie Farahnaaz and other storytellers come to the museum to share their experiences and stories with the tourists visiting the museum. As a new person entering a space of memories and healing, and hearing Auntie Farahnaaz share her story every day, I know that hope is the key. Hope that we will continue the work laid out by those before us.
They declared District 6 a white area. There it is, the 11th of February 1966.
I'm Lisa Hendricks in conversation with Julius, and you're listening to another episode in the District 6 Museum Vuselela Ons Luister podcast series. No matter where we are here. The audio snippets used in this podcast are taken from the District 6 Museum archive. The stories produced through this podcast series and the opinions and statements that may be contained herein do not reflect those of the District 6 Museum, but rather the individuals hosted within this series. This program is funded by the Mellon Foundation.